fine. So my name is Jason Eiseman. I'm the librarian for emerging technologies at the Yale Law Library. I blog at jasoneisman.com/blog, and you can find me on Twitter as well, at @jeisman.
And I'm Ryan Harrington. I'm a reference librarian at Yale, and I'm available here on Twitter as well. I'm really glad to be here today. This is something that we've been talking about and working on for quite a while, and something that I remember when Jason came on, we started talking about, because I just think it's really important not just to create content and send it out there, but to find out if anybody's reading it, if this is a waste of time, if this is a positive thing. Are we making any contribution to our community, to the profession? But that's really crystallized when this budget crisis happened and we had to tighten our belts a little bit. When that happened, we polled all of the professional library staff at Yale to ask them how we should be allocating our resources, both time and money. And the results aren't totally surprising, but they're jumbled. The only thing that's crystal clear is that people do not find any value in social networking and social media activity. It was the least important thing for the majority of people, and the second least important thing for almost all of the rest. But that got me thinking, do we not value it because we don't get enough benefits out of it, or do we not get enough benefits out of it because we don't invest enough resources into it? And we really couldn't know. There's no way to answer that question unless we started identifying what it is we're trying to measure. What are the benefits that we're looking for? And that brought me to this report from the Altimeter group. It came out about a year ago. And they measured the top 100 brands in the country, and they found this profound correlation between social media activity and profitability. But what was really interesting, I thought, about this group's report was that they measured not just the engagement in social media, but the depth of engagement. And from there, they created these 4 engagement profiles. The first one was Mavens. Mavens were groups like Starbucks and Dell. They were engaged in 7 or more channels, and they were deeply engaged in all of them. So clearly for these establishments, social media activity was a core part of their marketing strategy. It's something that they really cared passionately about. There are just some examples of what that looks like on a couple of different spectrums, different channels. The second one were, well, go back to that for a second, because have you guys seen the sort of chatter about Starbucks recently on Foursquare? Yeah. So, you're engaged in all of these different channels, and you don't necessarily do all of them well. But with Foursquare, for example, they're putting out these targeted ads when you check into a location. Here's a Starbucks nearby. And you can get like 10 cents off your Frappuccino if you become mayor. But guess what? There are 5 trillion Starbucks everywhere you go. So everyone is getting like bombarded with these ads, and they're getting irritated with it. So it's something that Starbucks is going to need to reevaluate. The second part of that was Starbucks is letting their own employees check in to the location. So how in the world can some customer go to Starbucks on 57th Street more than the general manager of the store who goes there like 12 times a day?
You don't know me.
And they wrote the second profile were the butterflies. And I like this name because it really kind of identifies what it is they're doing. So these people are engaged in a multitude of channels, but not very deeply. They may be engaged in 1 or 2 channels deeply, and the other ones languish. It's something on the minds of the marketing team at Monday and American Express, but not deeply enough. They're not really committed to it. And so when you do that, you get a lot of dead space. The third profile were the selectives. These were people that targeted different channels. So groups like Philips and H&M, they're only engaged in 6 or fewer channels, but they're deeply engaged in all of them. So they're really reaching their customer base at a particular place. So they may become Mavens at some point in the future. They may not ever want to become Mavens. Maybe they're happy there. But they have a strategy, clearly. It might just be one person working on all of these different channels, or 6 people, a small team, but they've got something in place. And finally, the wallflowers. Now, before this presentation started, We are already chosen the examples, which is funny. But these are people that are engaged in 6 or fewer channels and not deeply engaged. So they've got some dead space out there and not a whole lot of it. Companies like McDonald's and BP are in there. So what's funny about this is, so BP, there was this oil spill recently. But they really need to be engaged in social media at this point, talking with people. They weren't, and because of that, this occurred, right? This parody Twitter feed occurred with like jokes about the situation, mocking the other thing. I mean, it's very, very funny. And you can see they have 200,000 followers, and BP had like, well, 15,000 is not bad, but they're much more engaged. They're listed in many more channels. People pay a lot more attention to this, and it's more popular than the actual company's site, which is probably not great. So where are we? I can't help but think that we're either wallflowers or butterflies. And I think as a profession, we're probably there. So we needed to kind of identify what things, well, you can find us on blogs. We have many, many blogs. We have a Twitter feed, we've got a Flickr account, we've got Facebook. All of those things we're involved in, just not terribly deeply. What are we going to measure? It's really easy for that report. They did something new with the depth of engagement, but it's much easier to calculate the return on investment for a company like McDonald's than it is to do it for a public interest organization like ours, or something that serves the public. Well, you can do it. This is the formula that you would use. The return on investment is the gain from investment subtracted by the cost of the investment and divided by the cost of the investment. One thing is pretty easy. The cost is pretty simple for us. I mean, some of the things we pay for, like we have a Flickr account that we pay for, and we have some analytical tools that we use, that we pay for, and a couple of other services that we pay for. But the main one is time, right? That's how we're spending our time. That's really the cost to us as an organization, and what we need to really think about. Are we getting a good return on our time? Yeah. So measuring the profit, though, the gain from the investment, that's a lot easier, like I was saying, for a company like Dell. You
have a coupon code or something like that.
And you can trace it, right? So if somebody makes if somebody buys this mini netbook, they can trace it back to this particular post using some statistical tools. And that's great for them. So they know we invested this much time, we cost us this much dollars putting this thing out, and we got a sale that we wouldn't have gotten otherwise. Very easy for them. There are ways that we can do it ourselves, though. Like if I make a link to a periodicals database, we can see, as Jason will talk about in a little bit, who's entered the periodicals database from that link. So it's the same sort of a sale, I think. We can do it for our depository. If I link to that, we can see how many people are downloading information from our scholarship repository. But there's more. So those are the closest parallels to sales, I think, like circulation statistics or database usage. I think those things constitute a real clear parallel to sales. But looking more broadly, we're not really in the business of making money, so it doesn't make sense to define sales as just circulation or dollar amount. We're in the business of providing information, right? So if I create a blog post or something on Facebook that links to this blog post here on the bobbleheads, and we get traffic coming to our bobblehead display on our own website, I think that's a success. I think that traffic itself for us, because of the industry that we're in, is good. It means that we're generating knowledge. It means that we're getting people to pay attention to us. We're producing information that people are learning from. So just redefining profit and sales was kind of the first step that we took. At this point, we got together and we decided to create a task force. We wanted to have some plan in place. It was just kind of this hodgepodge of people creating a blog post if they wanted, putting something on Twitter if they wanted, and there was no real consistency to it. So we decided to get some buy-in from the organization by creating a plan that everybody could kind of respect and value and know where we were going. So out of all the channels available to us, we decided we wanted to become selectives. We want to go to 4 channels and really invest thoroughly in them. So out of those, we went and reduced some of the things that we're doing. We decided we're only going to invest time in 4 channels. Statistics was important on the other side too. We need to start tracking what's going on with our information, and we wanted to create a base. So we wanted to know what was going on before we started really implementing the plan, meaning how many people were entering our site from our links before, how many followers and fans and friends and likes did we have.
And going back, we wanted to set specific goals about, exactly what we were going to measure, how we were going to measure it, and how we were going to measure it on each social media channel, which we'll talk about in a second,
because you can't just measure everything. You got to choose something that you want to measure. We also wanted to decide, are we going to have a voice? Are we here to entertain? Are we here just to provide information? Do we want to have a personality at all?
If you look at our Twitter feed now, there's no personality. It just says new blog post, new photo post, and something like that.
Yeah, it's like, here's some information. Like, the next slide actually has it. News. And they've got, what is this site from?
JetBlue.
JetBlue, right? They're engaging with their customers and obviously talking to them. On our Twitter feed, we don't have a lot of mentions or direct tweets or anything. It's nothing.
Have you ever had a student contact you via Twitter, though?
We've had people from the public contact us there, and I've never had a student, to my knowledge, do it.
And some other librarians, some other commenters, but not a student directly.
We're thinking about using Twitter as something to display the fact that we're out there engaging with current contact by having a button on our website that shows the latest tweet. But yeah, we don't have students following us. I did something with a faculty member using Twitter in the classroom, and he was really surprised. Not a single student had ever used Twitter before, and they actually found it kind of intimidating.
Yeah, I haven't found a ton of students on Twitter myself.
Yeah, that's a push that we're going to try to make this orientation season. It's another one of the goals that we're setting.
I think Lori did the survey, right? And you found that nobody was using Twitter.
Yeah, none of our students.
None of the students, really.
We have a Twitter account, and the majority of those people are alumni or law people in the community or just goofballs. But yeah, no students.
You get a lot of all of those.
Yeah.
Right, that actually brings us to a point. A lot of people that follow us are not students. Probably there aren't even very many students that do follow us. But we have 3,000 people following us already on Twitter. So we wanted to maximize that utility. We already have an audience there. So in terms of personality and voice, we decided that audience was the public at large. It was a lot of law librarians. And we can publicize what we're doing at our university, at our law school, to these people. Or provide just information on how to do basically research skills and link them back into our blogs, which we'll talk about in a second. The content was important. We decided to divvy up some of the responsibilities so that different people were responsible for different channels. And something like the blogs we just reduced. We took the 4 blogs that we had before and reduced them to 2. We have a rare books blog that we kept open, and that was because we wanted to, the content is very different there. It's not like a traditional law library.
It's also very popular as opposed to our other blogs, and we can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it is really popular, and that was one of the points I wanted to make, that I wanted to respect the audience that was there and not fill their feeds or whatever with how to research Indian law and Madhur Patra. I wanted to let that be available for them. And that people, the audience that pays attention to the Rare Books blog, they come into our site all the time. I mean, they're huge users of our Flickr accounts, the pictures we have up on Flickr. Yeah.
And our other blogs weren't being updated very regularly, as you can see here. So trying to make it fewer blogs, some people with some responsibilities for updating the blog on a more regular basis. Hopefully get a little more traction that way.
So back to what I said before, we wanted to kind of see where we were already. So in Twitter, we had a lot of fan. So that's going to be someplace that we're going to invest some resources. We already have a base there. We don't have a base in Facebook, for example. I'll talk about it in a second, but one of the things I think, well, I don't know why. There's no one on there. There's like 200 people on our Facebook account, and there are 11 check-ins total on our Foursquare account. You know, there's no point in us really trying to develop this right now. We could be talking about letting them choose a movie or reserve the best carol or something if they're a mayor, except Jason's the mayor, so like, who cares? This other thing is not really relevant to us because the stat.
Although it's potentially, are people familiar with the creepy tree house? The idea that an adult builds a tree house to lure kids in. It's kind of creepy though, so they stay away. The online phenomena equivalent is that, you know, these brands want to build something really cool online, but it ends up being kind of creepy. And the best example we could find was Blackboard on Facebook, which a lot of students had described as a creepy tree house.
Yeah, I can see that.
I think for us it wasn't such a problem because we're really student-driven. So there's nobody on staff that builds things for themselves or to look cool. I mean, we make use of technology pretty well, but in pursuit of something else. And that may not be true for every institution, but we're definitely lucky in that regard.
Well, it's an interesting thing too, like for Blackboard even have a Facebook account because of how people use their Facebook accounts. You know, I might like the wine shop down the street from me, but I don't know that I would even like Blackboard.
Right.
Facebook.
And the other thing is, no one ever is going to go to this thing. So they don't get any utility out of it unless they're updating the newsfeed that gets into people's accounts. No one's ever going to go here. Can I ask you a question? It's always 1 and 2. Are these like just
Those are from my
templates?
Facebook.
That's it.
He's ignoring people.
I think you took your turn, right?
Yeah. So exactly what are we going to measure? You know, there's so much out there that we could measure. Every different social media channel has their own different sort of metric. What are those metrics? How are we going to measure them? And what exactly do they mean? So Harvard Law Library, for example, has 3,000 people. They used to be cult fans. Now they're people who like the Harvard Law Library, and 3,000 people like the Harvard Law Library. But they only have 333 followers on Twitter. We have over 3,000 followers on Twitter, but we have less than 300 people who like us on Facebook. And it would be really easy to say, well, until recently, we didn't have a lot of content on Facebook. But that kind of ignores the fact that, you know, the Harvard Law Library Twitter account that has about the same amount of content that we have on our Twitter account has 3,000 fewer followers. So what does it mean to have a follower? What is the value in that particular metric?
Can I stop you for a second?
Yeah, sure.
I want to add one thing here too. The title of our page we're noticing is probably a problem. You know, it doesn't say Yale Law Library, so it's possible that people don't find it. And that made a point about branding. I think you really need to be consistent with who you are across all of your different channels.
If you're setting up a Facebook page, you can never change the title. That becomes your URL. We did a similar thing. We have Illinois Institute of Technology Downtown Campus Library. Our students think of us as the Chicago-Kent Library. Chicago-Kent isn't anywhere in our title,
Right.
and even nobody's going to type out Illinois Institute of Technology, but they did think that. So, yeah.
Now,
Searching is hard. You have to build it another way.
Yeah, we set this up before Facebook started doing custom URLs for pages. So are you saying that now, since that switch over,
Well, just
you're
the
locked
search
into?
Search sucks. And Facebook, basically, is what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah, but you are locked into it. We created our
Yeah.
Facebook page, and our electronic services librarian, there's been debate on whether our library is going to say the name of it. And so she's like, I refuse to put it in, because if we put it in and then we change the name of our library, our URL is going to be locked into what we have now. So she won't put it in. So she's kind of like, we're in limbo right now.
Yeah, we're sort of there, not quite sure what we're going to do. We could just scrap the account. We don't have a lot of content or followers.
Yeah.
Well, just to give you some context, this particular page, I'm the one that created this page, and literally 5 minutes after I created it, I wanted to change the title. And I couldn't.
Crap.
Yes. Well, I mean, and the other thing is we thought about maybe scrapping the whole page and starting from scratch, which is certainly another option. And with only 200 some odd people who like the page, that might be something worth doing.
And maybe you can send them a message before you scrap it.
You could put it on the announcements of that page, like, we're
Yeah.
changing to this.
Please go here or whatever.
Right. So, like I was saying, part of the problem is all these there's so much to measure, and there's so much to keep in mind, and each social media channel measures something different. The big one seems to be interaction. That's the value. The value is you're interacting with customers or patrons or users or whatever. You look at Facebook statistics for this page, you'll see they have interactions at the top. So for this particular week, we have 3 interactions, and that's people liking our content, commenting on our content, or posting to our wall. And one of the nice things about Facebook violating our privacy is that if you own a page, you get a lot of good demographic information about the people who interact with your Facebook page. So you see, we get age information, gender information, and location information. Obviously, we're pretty big in New Haven, the United States, English speaking. We do have some international fans.
One thing is that they won't show this until you have over 25 because they do try to protect privacy somewhat. So once you have 200, they figured that's general enough that you can't identify specific people out of this.
Right. And one of the other things is you can see the spikes in interaction and maybe trace back those spikes to when things were posted, how they were posted.
Can you show us how you got to the statistics stuff?
Yeah, I suppose I could. If you own a page, it should be somewhere on the page.
It says view insights.
View insights?
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay.
There's a box on the side when you're logged in and you're viewing your page and it says view insights and you click on it.
Great, thank you.
Even that's a little bit enough. View insights. It's
So-
not what you would think, yeah.
So our Flickr account is a great source of content for us. Our Rare Books librarian keeps it updated. He's always posting new images from his rare book collection, and we paid for a pro account for this. And they track interaction. They call interaction interestingness. Interestingness is some sort of concoction of how many views you have, how many people favorite your photos, and how many people comment on those photos. But Flickr does have statistics available as well. So you can count views on your images, and you can see the spikes and maybe track those back to whether those spikes were because people were looking for them when those photos were posted to Facebook. Maybe it was a Twitter post that drove people to the Flickr account, and try and figure out where that traffic is.
You can also see keywords because Flickr can be great for Google search engine optimization. You can see exactly what they searched for when they found your photo, and then you can click on that and see where you rank in the Google images or something like that.
Right, yeah. So
It's fun.
Flickr has some good stuff. And one of the other nice things about Flickr is you can, and other content-heavy social media channels, is that you can look at the statistics on individual pieces of content, which is very valuable because you might find that certain areas of content are more popular than others. So that can be helpful as well.
I have a question, before you go on with the statistics. I mean, we're talking about how Harvard's Facebook account had bunches of followers, but their Twitter account didn't, and you guys were the polar opposite. Did you figure out why? I mean, I know that's very hard, but like, are they heavily engaged in their Facebook account? And that's kind of what, or maybe they pushed it to their students. I mean, you don't know what their internal marketing.
They do have students on there. They definitely, like,
It's probably just a matter of where it's posted, right? I mean,
That might be part of it.
People engage on there. I mean, if they have a movie of the week that they're showing, there's often discussions, many discussions about it. People like their status constantly. People are there.
Yeah.
Our Facebook page right now is a spam bot feed of like other things, so there's no engagement on it at all. And that's one of the main reasons we started talking about personality. Do we want to just have something that looks like spam?
And if you go and look at Harvard, and that might be another aspect too, when you go and look at Harvard Law Library's Facebook page, it has a personality.
Right.
It kind of, when you read theirs versus ours, there's a tone like it's a person writing it, not a bot. And that when you look at different brands on these social media channels, that's a conscious decision, I think, that every organization needs to make. Are we going to have a personality, or are we just pushing out news and information?
Also, Facebook is a very social context, so the more you can do that, we've experimented with doing trivia contests. We had a peep show with peeps and contests and stuff like that actually get people coming to it to vote or to interact in some way. So if you're bringing them back to do something and it's fun and it's for them.
You definitely need to ask them questions and get them involved.
So Flickr also has, like you were saying, refers, so we can take a look at where traffic is coming from. Flickr.com, that might be people searching for those photos, seeing them when they're posted, whatever. But some traffic coming from Twitter and Facebook and some other services on this particular day. We've started using Vimeo for our video hosting. It's another account we pay for, and there are a variety of different reasons that we decided to look at Vimeo instead of YouTube, terms of service being one of them. But one thing they have, which is really nice, is they have pretty good statistics. So we haven't really been pushing this out, but you can see that we posted some things. We have some spikes in people watching our content on Vimeo, and we can take a look at those statistics as well. They have geolocation, so we can see where people are coming from to take a look at those statistics. And because so many videos are embedded on other sites, we can see where the domains where those videos have been embedded and are being watched.
Are you able to see views on the different domains?
How do you mean?
So if a video is hosted somewhere else, can you see how many people have watched it on their channel?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. We can check it out, but we can look at, because it's a video, we can take a look at the total number of plays on the video, how many times it was loaded, and how many times someone actually finished watching the video, which can be important. And Vimeo also has likes and comments and things like that too, if that's something that you want to measure. But there are some really specific measurement tools that you can use to measure social media efforts. The big one right now is called Hootsuite. Are people familiar with Hootsuite? Right, so some people. They bill themselves as the professional Twitter client, but they also work with Facebook pages and has a few nice features. One of them, what we're using them for, is like Twitter feed, if you're familiar with that service. You can take RSS feeds, and all of these, well, most of these social media channels have RSS feeds. You can take those RSS feeds, run them through Hootsuite, and automatically publish Twitter posts or Facebook page posts with links to the original content. And based on the hourly URL shortening service, Hootsuite can track statistics on people clicking those links. I'll get to that in just a second. And some other features that are really nice. You can schedule tweets. So, like Ryan said, we had a problem with publishing content on a regular basis. Well, maybe we want to publish our content or store our content up front and then schedule those tweets to go out periodically. We can run time of day campaigns to see if statistics rise based on the time of day that we run particular tweets or Facebook posts or things like that. So it has some nice options like that. One metric that we haven't talked a lot about, but is a whole other area, is brand monitoring. So are people retweeting you or mentioning you? You were asking about that before. Are people interacting with us? That's a whole other metric you can get into. And Hootsuite can do that kind of monitoring as well. You can monitor social networking feeds. You can search by keywords, lists, things like that. One of the other nice things, especially for teams and organizations like this, a lot of times with social networks, what you're doing is you're passing out the organization username and password to a bunch of different people, and that can be problematic for a variety of reasons. You have a disgruntled employee who takes over your account or something like that, or it gets into the wrong hands, and then all of a sudden, you have a problem. So with Hootsuite, you can actually add team members, and they log into the Hootsuite account instead of the organizational social media account, and they can post from Hootsuite to the social networks. But we're focusing on statistics, and as you can see, they have daily clicks for our different tweets, and you can see the spikes, and we can go back and take a look at which tweets got the most hits and try and figure out what content was posted there, and how we can gain some traction with that. They also have refers, and we can see where our traffic was coming from as well.
I just want to point out that the difference between a Tuesday, and a Saturday night is profound. So it makes a lot of sense to schedule your tweets and set them up so that they come out at a time when people are actually paying attention.
Right. I've also kind of found in the morning, obviously, they're a little more apt to be popular as well when people are coming to work and on their social networks instead of working. So that those tweets are more popular than if it gets tweeted at the end of the day, and then people are kind of going home from work and not paying attention to their social networks, I guess. So FeedBurner has been around for a long time, and a while back Google acquired them, and FeedBurner tracks statistics on RSS feeds. So you run your RSS feeds through FeedBurner, and it tracks statistics on that. Subscribers, item use, so individual items in the RSS feed, maps, same thing as the other services that I was talking about as well. You can see where your traffic is coming from. And uncommon uses is to help you track down misuse of your content. So if people are...
How does FeedBurner deal with keeping track of subscribers on services like Bloglines, where Bloglines itself is only pulling it once, but might be serving it up for 1,000 subscribers?
I question that as well, and I don't necessarily know the answer to that. I'm going to talk about our preferred method of statistic keeping in just a minute. I'm not necessarily interested in staying with FeedBurner for the exact problem that Tom mentions over there. Some of these tools, how reliable they are is certainly a question. Something you need to look at. But it's worth knowing about and taking a look at.
It's worth knowing about because you can at least compare from what you have to what you get.
And it's really nice that it provides the email subscription thing, which if you've got faculty members and others who don't want to go to a blog, but they want to get a link in their email every time it updates, that might be more intuitive.
And you can get creative with them too. Like I said, most of these social media channels have RSS feeds. And so you could run your RSS feeds through FeedBurner, put them on your homepage, something like that, and then, it might help you track some of the statistics for that. People who are subscribing to the RSS feeds for your different social media channels through this particular analytical tool. And then the big one is Google Analytics, which is, hopefully people are familiar with this and using this on their websites. We could have a whole hour-long discussion just of Google Analytics. And it's very powerful, very robust. You can track so many different things on it. It goes beyond your typical hits, page views, things like that. You can look at what browsers people are looking at on your website, things like that, mobile devices, all sorts of information through Google Analytics. So taking a look at all the different social networking sites that are out there, and all the different things you can track, and all the different ways you can track them, and all the questions about what those statistics mean, led us to try and take just a slice of that to set our specific goals, figure out what our social media campaign was going to be, and then just measure that. So instead of driving people to all these other social networking sites, like just say, we're going to track people on Facebook, we're going to track people on Flickr, we're going to track Twitter. Instead, we're going to try and leverage our website content, drive people to our website, and then use Google Analytics to measure them there. Because Google Analytics will tell us where they're coming from as well. We could even match that up with Hootsuite eventually and try and match that up.
Obviously, this way you're controlling the dialogue, you're engaging with people, you're there yourself constantly, and
the statistics are a lot more robust as well. So a good example is our Flickr account. So Flickr does keep pretty good statistics, and you can see people searching on your Flickr account, and that might be valuable. But at the same time, we're not going to try and measure everything. We're going to drive people to our website. So one of the things you can do with Flickr is import it into HTML pages. We're currently moving our website to Drupal, and Drupal has some nice functions that allow you to import Flickr content. So once we get this content imported into our Drupal website, then we can drive people to that website where analytics is installed and see if we're successfully using social media to get people to view this content. Even if it's not on Flickr, we can measure it, drive people to our website and see if that's successfully getting people to view that content. Okay? Another good example is we're redoing our research guides. So the way we're redoing our research guides is each resource is kind of a discrete piece of content. It's a discrete resource. And so you may have seen a while back on our Twitter feed, we had these resources of the day. We don't have them anymore. We kind of experimented a little bit with trying to automatically pull out a resource and post it to our Twitter feed and our Facebook page. And that goes back to what Ryan was saying about trying to measure circulation statistics and database usage. So hopefully we'll be able to reinstate that, make that a permanent program. We pull out a service like, let's say, Monopatra. I'm not sure if we can actually track database usage on this particular database. But this is our website page. Hopefully we post that to the Twitter account. It drives people to the website page where Google Analytics is running. We can track the statistics on that. Plus, we can see if we get any usage, increased database usage, increased circulation statistics, and things like that.
Are you doing that with the internal database? Like, how are you pulling links to all these things automatically?
Okay. So, not to get too technical, but I'll take a little diversion. So Drupal has, you create Drupal pages with views. You can create a random view. So essentially what I've been experimenting with is creating a view that runs once a day and pulls out a random resource, creates a random view, adds that to a page that lists all of the random resources that have been pulled out, which creates an RSS feed that runs into Hootsuite that looks at it every 24 hours to see if something new has been posted. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's clear as mud.
So yeah, that's one thing we're working on. And we have other websites with a lot of content on there. A lot of libraries don't think about all the content that they have available. We have our judicial nominations database, and we have our Avalon historical documents project as well. And there's a lot of content there. And we can use this content, hopefully eventually, to see if we can use social media to get people to visit these websites where Google Analytics is also running. So to finish up, talking about return on investment again, You know, for nonprofit organizations, again, it seems kind of fuzzy. We know the cost of investment because we know how much money we're paying for our Flickr Pro account and our Vimeo account. We know how much we're paying people. We know how much time people are spending on certain things, or at least we can know if we're making sure we're tracking those types of statistics. But you know, again, it's the gain from investment where it's kind of fuzzy. But it becomes a lot easier if you set those specific goals and say, you know, we're going to measure success as an increase in traffic to these parts of the website. We're going to measure success if we can get more hits. We're going to measure success if more people use these databases, and then see if social media can help us achieve those goals.
And that's what this all gets back to, right? I want to have, the next time we poll, people have actual information in front of them before they decide how valuable our energy is and the benefits that we get from social media are. I mean, people just don't have any information. So that's really what this is about. And it's not a science for us. I mean, it's just like more of a curiosity. But I hope you have some idea of how we're doing it, how you can measure things, and what you can actually be measuring and how.
Yeah. Who in your organization kind of decides what that criteria is, and then, you know, is it kind of a group of people who's kind of coming to a consensus, or is it, you know, one person kind of just saying, well, you know, if we get a 10% spike in our traffic, is that useful?
Well, that's one of the nice things that this project has done that I've really appreciated. So coming in as the librarian for emerging technologies, I kind of knew that all of this social media stuff was going to fall on me, and it was kind of all over the place, and we didn't know, you know, what was success and what wasn't, and you know, how are we going to measure success and all these types of things. What we decided to do is kind of separate it out. So there's a social media task force that Ryan's chairing that I'm separate from, so I'm not on the task force, and they're kind of the content editors, the success deciders. You know, they're going to make those types of decisions, and then I'll work with them to kind of implement that plan and figure out, you know, are we on a successful path? You know, is this where we want to be going? How can we accomplish what they want to do?
And where are you, I guess, so then the question would be more to you, where is your group kind of finding its, you know, best practices to say, like, well, this is success? Because that's kind of been the ultimate question for me about social media just in general is, you know, in the end, is it way overstated? I mean, I would argue, after having used it for many years, that it's totally overstated. You know, the value of it, especially if you're not kind of in that space.
We don't know exactly. You know, what we're going to do is we're going to reevaluate this after this fall semester and again next year and see what's happened. I mean, we're not looking for a specific number. Maybe it would be a good idea to set one. But if traffic goes up 10%, if some databases that aren't used currently are used more, that's going to be the success. But this isn't sort of like a make or break idea. It's just kind of a project to see what's going on.
But that's when you get into like real ROIs. You're taking like, you know, man hours and actual, you know, time expended and you know, software purchased and services purchased, and then dividing that, you know, I mean, just dividing that to get your number, you know. So
Right, but part of the point is, you know, so you can't, for libraries, as I see it anyway, you can't, that investment number, you know, if we go back to the, you know, this investment number is almost, I mean, you can put a value on it, right? Because we could say, theoretically, we could say, we pay this much for this database, and we know it gets used this much. So we know cost per use, we know what kind of value we're getting out of that. But for libraries, other librarians, I'm sure, that's kind of a fuzzy metric as well. I mean, and it depends. Yeah.
What I would say, I mean, we set up a lot of these things a long time ago, Debbie and myself that work in the electronics side, you know, library technology group at our school. And they haven't been a huge investment of time. You know, like you said, you can set things up with bots that barely do anything with your time. But we're trying to get it more involved in the rest of the research librarians. And to me, whether or not we're getting a huge response on things we're doing, when we have people who are willing to experiment and try new things, and they're thinking creatively in areas that they haven't necessarily reached out before, that's to me a huge value, because now the librarians are thinking of themselves as experts in a different way. They're thinking of what they're providing as content in a different way, things that have always been kind of in my ball court, and I don't necessarily have the right expertise to go out and make this something that we do with students. So they're coming up with really creative ideas, and I mean, okay, Teep Show really, is that so valuable? We actually had a really positive response, and we're going to use that during orientation. We're doing new projects and people are having fun with their jobs. There's things that are definitely very mushy. How are you approaching your job differently when you're thinking about audience? How are you approaching your job differently when you're having fun and being creative and being less formal about your kind of expertise, and what kind of relationships are you building? And those can be, I think, extremely valuable and not a huge amount of time.
You see, and maybe it's because I kind of straddle the IT side, so I'm a little more on that side where I have, you know, a list of projects that I have to get done, and my time is maybe a little more, I find a little more, you know, precious, that I need some help prioritizing where I should be spending my time, where it's best used. And you know, you're kind of right, where it's really difficult to focus in on this ROI. I kind of figure, I would say we're triangulating it down. You know, we're starting to do a better job of tracking actual, getting to that measurement, and this is our step to getting there.
Well, I mean, it could be argued that it's kind of like advertising in that, you know, you're everywhere and people can't tell you how they found you, but it was more kind of being that you were ubiquitous and, you know, that your presence was felt, that eventually, yeah, so tracking down to the conversion level, like, oh, well, this person definitely came from Facebook, this person definitely came from Flickr or Twitter, that's almost kind of an exercise in futility.
But what is valuable, I think, is parsing this stuff out. I mean, we wanted to know how much time is being invested, how much money we are investing, because I want to be able to compare 12 hours a year to 10,000.
I was going to say, just in terms of this whole futility thing, are you taking into account that many, many Twitter users are going to show up in analytics as direct, as people who went to the site directly rather than being referred through Twitter? Because if they're using TweetDeck or something else like that, it doesn't show up as a referred visit.
But it'll show up in Hootsuite because they clicked on the link.
Yeah. Okay.
So we use those together, and we have a more, you know, direct picture of that. Yeah. So, but we'll also be able to figure out a little bit, you know, if we see an increase in traffic, for example, that database page, we know everyone's visiting that database page the same time we send out a tweet about that particular database, then even if we don't know exactly which one we're coming from, we at least know they're coming from a social media, you know, site or application or something. Social media got them there. And I would say that's not futile in the sense that if that works, if more people use our stuff based on these social media campaigns, then that's valuable to know.
You just say social media got them there. It's kind of almost like social media, like, you know, and the individual tool is not quite as important as it can be overall effort.
Well, I mean, in combination. I mean, we might have to look at that too. Maybe there are certain types of databases, you know, like I mentioned with the Flickr account, there might be certain types of databases, certain types of content that have a little more resonance, and we'll have to look at that as well.
Yeah, Eric?
Yeah, what I'm wondering about is how much, when you're analyzing all this, are you looking based on the surveys and the Q is not things, you're looking at the demographics of those social media tools. Q goes to older folks like us, not as much to younger folks. Do you spend less time on that because your core mission is for your law students, or is your core mission something larger? And so, you know what I'm saying? And so,
yeah. Well,
we are the world, or we are the 21-year-olds and the 24-year-olds?
Well, so I was just, I was on the strategic planning committee. We just finished our next strategic plan for the next 5 years. And we had a lot of discussions about, you know, who our audience was. And we kind of, we laid it out. We said, all right, you know, number one, you know, students and faculty, Yale University. But we also put in our I forget exactly where we put it, but in our strategic plan, somewhere it says, one of our principles is to contribute to the larger body of global knowledge. So that is part of our plan. So, reaching students specifically would certainly be nice. It would be maybe the best. But at the same time, one of our principles is to kind of get this content, because the judicial nominations database, as an example, the Avalon project, as an example, those aren't necessarily directed at our students. Those have really valuable, those are really valuable content repositories that are valuable to the world, and getting them out there and getting people to view them is valuable for us.
Sure, I just was thinking, if you're trying to drive a database business, if your students aren't using Twitter,
Yeah.
you're kind of tailoring the tool to the audience.
Right.
And so then you might have better metrics too. But what's funny too, I was looking at your Twitter followers versus Harvard just now,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's most of the people in this room are the overlap.
Yes.
That's hysterical.
Yeah.
And it's like, I was counting heads, and it's, if you have people that are overlapped, I think most of them are in this room.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, if you go to all these different Facebook pages and look at the fans, it's the same law librarians
Yeah.
are the
Yeah.
fans of every single one.
Yeah, exactly.
I think, I have three thoughts. One thought is that the demographics are going to change in terms of what people are using, because just like we've seen MySpace drop in popularity, I think that world of social media is very dynamic. We don't know what the next Facebook will be. I also think that it is, at least from where I sit, it is if you consider a law school that's in a university, the globe, the world, okay, almost the mission, the planning has to be almost beyond just the libraries for sides and the whole law school and then the whole university, which is difficult, but because there's some overlap in terms of tweets and sharing of information and all that kind of stuff. And that's hard both in terms of doing a meeting and getting people to staff it, but to come up with those big ideas. And what you have to offer, I think, is the libraries doing the technical stuff. That might make it better. And then I guess the third thing that I wanted to share is the fuzziness of this is not is consistent, because when any kind of business puts money into advertising, the ROI on the advertising is just as fuzzy. They count sales, but how do you know that stand in the grocery store caused the purchase? You really don't. There's sort of a belief, or so I wouldn't. Finally, I'll say is that the libraries as a whole are doing this. I mean, I just checked. There's some other articles out there, and it is not unusual for like other. You said a nonprofit are looking at this stuff too, and we can borrow from them.
Yeah.
And they're all have a squishy product, and are counting not necessarily widgets sold, it's something else.
For instance, you said BP doesn't have a presence on Facebook very effectively. Deepwater Horizon Response is the team that is, the U.S. agencies and BP. So if you want to follow up on what's happening in the Gulf, you can follow Deepwater Horizon Response on Facebook and get updates every day about what current stuff are, local concerns.
Yeah, they were a little too little too late.
Really involved.
Yeah.
We're going to have to wrap this up, I think, but...
Well,
we
I think we
Right, the very last thing, you can just go back to your first slide. I'm curious what the other things were.
Well, I mean, digitizing rare books, digitizing rare books, maintaining the website, ancillary websites like Avalon, the judicial nominations database, maintaining and upgrading Morris, which is our ILS. Faculty project websites, so websites to support things in the law school. Internal infrastructure, so we kind of define that as facilities, printers, scanners, things like that. Digital Commons, our legal scholarship repository, ebooks, and the library intranet. So Yeah, those were our things. And then the other thing I wanted to
I think
mention.
it's just really fascinating. It just really chopped up. I mean, we didn't get any information from that other than nobody values it.
Right. But one thing I wanted to mention, I've been kind of saying this a little bit, and I think it speaks a little to Karen's point. You know, if you have a web presence, then you are a publisher. But can you imagine like a legal publisher, Wolters Kluwer, Lexis, West, you know, saying, we're going to have this treatise or something that we're going to publish. We're not sure how often it's going to be upgraded, or updated rather. We're not sure exactly what type of content's going to be there. We're not sure when it's going to get updated. We're not sure how much it's going to cost. But I mean, essentially that's what we're doing with all these social media tools. It is. We're kind of putting them out there without knowing what content we're going to put out there. And this is hopefully our attempt to kind of get a little closer to that publishing mindset. Any other questions? I think we can take one or two more.
I'm going to disappear like the end of Sound of Music when this thing's over. So if you have any questions.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
I'll just do it. I did some link at the door. Oh, they were waiting for me. Yeah, I saw this. All right, you want help with this?
Oh, no, I'm all set. Thank you.
Very nice to meet you. I didn't really make you.
So funny. When you put up wallflowers, all I think is tumbleweeds. It's like, that's so like,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a good one, too.
Especially because I'm trying to say, you guys are emphasis and we're proud of the work that you guys are doing. I'm trying to make this really awesome.
Yeah, I think
I want to say it's
a couple years ago we just transitioned ourselves. I just wanted to know, you guys have any plans on how you're going to accomplish that? Because it's not,
you see,
not a small task.
Yeah, I know. I think it's small. So there are content when we're working with the administration right now,
we have some people hiring, and you know, so we do have a site position, so it's not like
he's really the one.
Right,
you wanted to talk to him.
It's like I mean,
it's a hard piece to tackle.
I mean, it's a new position, and like it's a new responsibility that we're creating, but you know, money's coming from somewhere else. It's not like creating.
I mean, we went through the process, the website, we went from no content report system to one, so a whole different classifying things now, where you couldn't do it before.
Oh, really? Yeah, that's been the slowest progress over probably the past 7 months. It's just been, we have like just people doing that, and now we've got a lot of sites ready to go. And we made some sites immediate, like foreign, international origin, and that's been sent over a long time ago. So we have 2 sites right now that we're looking on. And we're trying to figure out a way to. Well, now we're
I'd be interested to hear about how it all turns out.
talk about that.
Yeah, we all need to shake up here.
Where is it?
Jacksonville, Florida.
In Jacksonville.
Yep.
Are you taking a place? Oh, are you with the library?
I'm not with the library, I'm actually with IT.
This guy never must be just got there.
I may know what you want to see.
All right, so I'm going to say hi. Never seen you.
Will do.
All right.
But it's nice talking to you guys.
Yeah, nice talking to you. Thank you.
too serious.
Okay, I'm really gonna go.
Let me know if you need it.
Professional level. You're not gonna have